What's up, guys? Headed over to Luke Thomas. Going to talk a little Bellator 208, which involves Fedor and Emelianenko, and your boy.
How many stops have you made today?
We've been on a few. We did CBS, we went over to ESPN, and now here we are.
All right, good for you. And this is the last stop of the day?
I don't know if that's true or not, but it's the most important. I can tell you that much.
It's the most important one you could do right now.
Right now.
A couple more things I want to get to you if I can. What do you make of this? Let me ask you this way. The Jon Jones stuff.
Yep.
Everyone knows my views on anti-doping don't fit into the Overton window. I'm not here to rehash that. Here's what I guess I am surprised by. And surprise is the word. I thought about it. When he came out and he had that statement, and he was like, man, this has been a trying year, and then you see in the decision by the arbitration panel that he was in rehab for a time, in a real rehab place, such as they exist. And then about a couple days later, he starts firing shots at everyone. I think he fired some of you, George St. Pierre, him and Daniel went after it, and not just shots, nasty ones.
Sure. Saying
that St. Pierre had brain damage. I guess I kind of thought there'd be a degree of competitiveness mixed with life's humility. I think I'm wrong. There's none of that. He feels like he has to go and absolutely assassinate anyone who goes after his character. Should I be surprised by that?
Well, it is very interesting. The psychology of Jon Jones is very, very interesting. It's not very many times in life you will meet a sociopath. That word gets thrown around a little bit. But all that definition really means is somebody who believes their own lies. And Jon could pass a lie detector's test. He truly believes the things he says. So that's a personal thing. Now, when you look at the other end of it as a competitor, well, the guy's fantastic. I mean, I think there's all sorts of options for him. Does he want to come to heavyweight? I like what Dana's saying. Do him and Daniel at heavyweight. Does he want to go to light heavyweight? I mean, I think there's some really interesting things that'll be done there. But you can always tell the difference between Jon Jones's manager working with a PR director, who Jon has no idea about, and then puts something out with his name on it, versus when Jon gets hemmed up and goes to social media himself. You can just tell the difference.
It's kind of crazy. What are you expecting from a kind of return from him? Any drop-off?
Well, I think that there could be a little bit, but I would also offer for you that Jon Jones could drop off and still be the man. The worst I've ever seen him look in his life was against OSP. Yeah. With that said, he won
all 5 rounds.
All 5 rounds, left with a championship, won the conditioning, won the strength, won the range, won the striking, won the grappling. And that's the worst he's ever looked. So he's a very special talent. And I'm not here to bury him as much as there is just something socially that is very fascinating about Jon Jones. I mean, he is still pleading that he was innocent. He was not found innocent. That's not true. He has a second strike. If he has a third one, it'll be a lifetime ban. Now, of course, we are adhering fiercely to the rules that we make up on the spot when it comes to how these things work, but that's how it's been explained. And yeah, he's in a jam. Look, you have to understand. Here's what the arbitrator said, which was fascinating. They not only let him go for doing the snitching, but they also took 3 months off because they ruled that he did not intentionally take it. That was the exact words they used. Let me provide you with a different scenario. Okay. Jon Jones fails a drug test for an illegal steroid. Jon Jones is suspended. Jon Jones is out. Jon Jones is pleading his innocence. Jon Jones is retested and tests positive for the same illegal steroid. Jon Jones is out. He is pleading his innocence. I have no reason to cheat. I'm not even in the gym. I'm not training. I'm not fighting. He is tested again, and he tests positive again and again and again. That is what an innocent man would do. The fact that he tested one time should not lead a logical person to believe it was an accident. Do you want to know why I don't test positive anymore? Because I knew what I was taking, and I quit taking it. Look, if Jon Jones was innocent and was behaving in the same manners and taking the same things and eating at the same restaurant and living in the same place, he should be getting the same conclusion, which is a continual positive test. The fact that he only tested hot once tells you, if you have any form of logic, that he knew what he was taking and he stopped.
The way it was explained, you saw Jeff Davitsky on, I think, the Joe Rogan podcast or somewhere else, and they were saying, and look, I don't know what the truth is, I can just make some guesses, but one of the things that was said was, there's no way it could be intentional, and here's why, because it was negative, then positive, negative in the short window, and here's why. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, that's one theory. The other theory is that you're just bad at hiding it. right? I mean, it's like both are equally plausible.
For sure.
You tell me what's true. In any event, a couple more things here before.
But isn't that fascinating where people try to go down that road and they just confuse you and it is confusing? And Nowitzki is an expert on it, so sometimes you really need to listen to what Jeff says.
But he's got his own. I mean,
but Luke,
this idea he's like sort of the guy who calls it down the middle. To me, I just don't buy.
But Luke, what isn't it fascinating is the argument is because of these tests, it must have been unintentional. It's like, well, what would the test show differently, whether it was intentional or unintentional? What would that have to do with the nanograms and all the stuff you're breaking down? None. Zero.
It's crazy. Chael Sonnen here in studio. A couple more questions for you, and I really appreciate your time. Conor, do you think he should get an immediate rematch with Khabib? We were talking about this earlier in the show. I think that's a terrible idea.
Well, and it all depends what Conor wants to do. What would that be great for business? Would I be excited when I tune in and watch it? Yes. I think that might be a different question than what you're asking. I will offer you this, though. That is not the worst Conor's ever had his ass kicked. He had his ass kicked worse by Nate Diaz. By example, he won the third round. Some people don't know that. The judge, it wasn't really reported, but the judges did turn scorecards in. Yes. Mm-hmm. Conor actually did win the third round, which hands and signifies Khabib's first loss of a round in his entire career. So I did think and I also saw what you saw with the wrestling. I saw some good moments there, and I don't know how serious Conor is about fighting right now. I think he thought he was serious, but he was drunk 3 weeks ago on top. He did. He walked out cold. He had absolutely no sweat on him. It was just a little bit of a different deal. I only offer you that because Conor had his ass kicked worse by Nate Diaz and figured it out, closed the gap, and got his hand raised. And that was not Conor's hardest fight. I guess that's what I'm saying. That was Khabib's hardest fight. Khabib's never lost a round before. So I think that there's something interesting you could look to. It would be speculative. I do not believe the outcome would be different, but I do offer to you that the fight would be. I think it'd be a different fight.
I disagree slightly, if I may. In the case of McGregor,
it's your show, of course.
I know, but in the interest of fair banter,
okay.
He was kicking Diaz's ass in that first fight before he gassed, and it was at 170. You could just recognize immediate adjustments that were available to you. In this one, it's like, where do you go? To me, he took that third round off, Khabib did. I don't know that for a fact, but it just kind of looked like that because he came out fresh as a daisy in the fourth, and then from that point it was over. It's like he could improve some of the things that he didn't do right the last time, but if the issue is you're going to compete with this guy on wrestling terms, over time, he's just going to win. Plus, the way in which he knocked Conor down in the second round, I don't call that he didn't get rocked as much as he got dropped. That quite the same thing. Yes, he did lose the round, so in that sense, it's sort of novel to me. But I looked at that, I was like, I don't know that a year's time is enough to make up the difference here.
Sure.
So that's why I get a little bit concerned.
Well, and I'll concede to you, the premise of my argument was essentially Conor's going to learn from that experience and be able to do better. But if I'm going to make that argument, the same would go for Khabib, because he did learn, particularly with the ground and pound, Luke, that it wasn't just about pinning, posturing, and punching. It was about passing. As soon as he started to pass, then he passed him out. Conor turned. I mean, it was all the. So certainly Khabib also knows where I need to get in this fight. So it's a little bit of a wash. I would watch it, though, and I do think that it comes down to Conor. So many people are saying, well, I'll do Conor versus Ferguson. Now, people are talking about Conor versus Ferguson because we are expecting that Khabib is going to be on ice for a little bit, at least until he gets to the commission and then whatever they hand down. But I don't think that that's likely. I don't know how you bring Conor in off of a loss versus Tony. Certainly you could repackage it and sell it. That'd be great for Tony and for him to be able to do a little business. But I don't know if that's something Conor would be interested in. I think Conor's looking for big fights, and there's not enough spice on Tony, and it's too damn hard.
The Diaz thing is still out there.
Sure.
They could do that. Let me ask you a question about analyst work, and I know you do work for ESPN. What's your analyst work with Bellator exactly?
So I'm just a commentator when they do live events.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess I've seen you. I just don't know how consistent it is or what the rules are. But in any case, we played your clip last week. We're not going to rehash it, but there was something you were asked by the Submission Radio boys. Those are the boys from Australia. Yep. They asked you. They're like, "Are you saying that Conor can't wrestle?" And you just looked at him dead in the camera and you go, "Yep." That's all you said, one word. And they were trying to, not bait you, but they were trying to play devil's advocate, right? And I have to say, I really appreciated that moment because this job calls for a couple of things. It calls for fairness, and I don't do it at the same level, of course, but some version of it. It calls for fairness, it calls for accuracy, but it also calls for candor. And everyone in MMA is so goddamn sensitive. MMA needs safe spaces for everyone's hurt feelings, even when you're not trying to be mean. There's no hint of animosity in that analysis that I could detect whatsoever. But don't you find, as an analyst, and in this community generally, that we just don't call it like we see it very often?
Yes, yes. And if you ever ask a guy for a prediction, you can see him do the math, and he's panicking because we have such a small community. Well, what if I see this guy more often than I see that guy? And this guy, he texts me every now and then. And it's really hard to call it straight. You know, when it comes down to the Conor thing, no, Conor can't wrestle, but let's look a little bit closer. Every 4 years, Ireland is not contesting any wrestling in the Olympic Games. They don't have it in the colleges or the high schools or the junior highs. They don't have a wrestling club out there. So to say that he can't wrestle is very fair. I would say the same thing about Michael Bisping. Both of those guys went on to world championships, and both of those guys could give you resistance when you're trying to take them down. So there's no part of it that's an insult. But if you're asking me the word wrestling, which comes with a standardized definition.
Right. Context. Yes.
No, the answer is no. He didn't own a singlet, and has never owned a singlet. And that's just the reality. There's no put down here. Can't wrestle.
So let me ask you this as we close the interview. Where are you in like the peak of your popularity? I mean, those fights against Silver were obviously huge fights. The whole world was paying attention. But here you are, man. You're on ESPN doing big stuff. You're on Bellator, headlining against Fedor Emelianenko October 13th at the Nassau Coliseum, Bellator 208. Here you are, YouTube channels blowing up. Here you are doing interviews every which way. It seems to me like this is, maybe I'm wrong about the arc and how you feel about it personally, but it seems to me like, I don't know if it's the peak, but if it's not, it's pretty close. And this seems like a huge resurgence for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think I feel that too. And, you know, the numbers don't lie. Fighters lie and promoters lie. Numbers don't lie. And, I had very good numbers in the UFC. I lost every single record to Conor McGregor, but every one that Conor won, whether it was live gate, he took it from me. Whether it was free television rating, he took it from me. And regardless of what you hear, whether it was pay-per-view, he took it from me, not from Ronda.
All right.
They like to tell the story the other way, that it went Ronda, then me. No. It was me and then Ronda, and she'll tell you the same thing if she was telling you the truth. But in Bellator, look, I have the live gate record as well. It was at Madison Square Garden last year. I had help on that card. Fedor was on that card.
So what do you attribute this longevity, aside from the fact that you can still fight? But it can't just be that. Lots of guys can still fight. Sure. Something else happening here, right?
Yeah, and I suppose I can't really put my finger on it, but I love it. And I am out there, and I'm passionate about it. And this isn't a nuisance for me. This is a nuisance for some guys to do media tours and stuff. I love the sport. I love to talk about it. It's one of the few things that I know really well that I'm passionate. I have a hobby about. So maybe all of those things together have carried over. But I still love the sport. I feel just as good now. I'm just as hungry for victory as I was 10 years ago.
Put on your analyst hat. Put on your Bellator hat. I know you're fighting Fedor this weekend at Bellator 208 in Uniondale, Nassau Coliseum. Folks should go check that out. But let's talk about the other tournament real quickly. I got to say, I don't know what kind of condition Rory's going to be in after that beating he took.
Ooh.
I was with you on that one. I didn't think that one was very competitive when they booked it because I did believe in Rory. But I also was like, well, Musasi's, let's say they're equally talented. Just the weight difference is going to just make that a nightmare. Okay, I got to tell you, true or false? Ed Ruth is the dark horse in that tournament.
100%.
I think he's ready for a breakout moment.
He's like a plus 1,600. I'm going, guys, you got to put some money on it. That happens to be the exact same odds that a young man named Daniel Cormier was a number of years ago in the Strikeforce tournament that he wasn't even supposed to be. And remember when he was the alternate? He was number 9.
He came in late. Yep.
Got thrown in and runs through everybody. Yes, Ed Ruth. Just with the athleticism and his ability to compete, he will not quit. He will not beat himself. On that alone, it's worth a few bucks.
All right. Well, you know what? Chael Sonnen takes on Fedor Emelianenko, Bellator 208. Of course, the event is called Fedor versus Sonnen. They got to start putting Sonnen at the beginning of these things, huh?
Yeah.
Right?
He's coming in second.
What the hell, guys? It's going to be at the Nassau Coliseum, Uniondale, New York, up in Long Island this Saturday. Live and free, of course, on Paramount Network. Chael, thank you so much for coming in, man.
How do we say goodbye? Do we fist bump?
We fist bump now. All right, there it is.
Good to see you, pal.
Chael Sonnen, Luke Thomas, coming right back.
It's always so fun to be around you.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Let's get a quick picture if we can.
Man. Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Cool.
All right.
Good seeing you, buddy.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
So just send me that footage whenever you get a chance.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We always keep you so long, but that's a compliment.
Yes,
Good to
thank
see
you.
you.
It is a compliment. We don't want to be rushed.
Yeah,
love
like
time.
7 minutes in, you're already getting kicked off. You know, it just wasn't going well.